It's Halloween weekend as this video is going live, and I had to think of a suitably scary Pokemon. The obvious choice would have been a Ghost type, but there are only 2 Ghost type lines in all of Generation 2, so I had to think a little laterally, and that's when I realised who's creepier than Mr. Mime. In this generation, Mr. Mime is a pure Psychic type Pokemon. That means he has 3 weaknesses, 2 times weaknesses to Bug, Ghost and Dark type moves. And at the other end of the scale, Mr. Mime resists both Psychic and Fighting type moves. Now this is the final video of the month of October, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for the support you've shown over the last month. It has been remarkable. If you'd like to continue supporting, there are little things you can do like pressing the like button, subscribing if you really enjoy my content, and of course leaving a comment. And I want to know, what gives you the creeps? What is your phobia? And with all that out of the way, let's take a little look at our Mr. Mime. So at level 5 we have 20 HP, we're holding a berry, and our only move is Barrier. That will be a problem. Our attack is 10, our defense is 12, 15 in special attack, 17 in special defense, and 15 in speed. They're the stats of the Mr. Mime, so let's get the graphics up and let the challenge begin. I would normally show you the very first encounter we have with our Pokemon, however in this instance I had to wait until we found a Hoppip. Hoppip has no attacking moves at level 3, so we're in no danger of being damaged, and that lets us get through all our barriers, get to struggle, eventually knock one out and get a little bit of experience. A few Pokemon later we encounter this Sentret, and Sentret will give us the experience we need to only grow 1 level and get our first attacking move. Our first move is Confusion. Confusion is a nice base 50 power, 100% accuracy move, and it's going to be utilising our special attack. And with 100 base stat in special attack, this should make the game a lot quicker than it would have done if we'd have been given something like Tackle at level 6. And so with all of that out of the way, let's take a look at the first rival battle. I used the Universal Pokemon Randomizer to replace Cyndaquil with Mr. Mime. That is because Feraligatr has some Dark-type moves, but this battle was very easy. Blink and you miss it. So we can make it back to Professor Elm's laboratory and tell the police officer that the rival's name is triple question mark. We can then get some Pokeballs from the Professor's aid, and we can move on into the Sprout Tower. Because we have a Psychic type move, it makes sense to do the Sprout Tower first to get a little bit of extra money, because we are going to be punching things, and it also gives us that extra bit of experience. Not that I think we'll need it for Falconer's gym, but we might need it for Bugsy's gym. So we just confuse all the Pokemon in front of us. They're getting a little bit confused as to why somebody has brought a Mr. Mime of all things up here. We defeat the Elderly, and we can now move on to Falconer. Falconer is a flying type specialist and leads with a Pidgey. We use Confusion against the Pidgey to knock it out in 1 shot, and it's a 2-shot on the Pidgeotto. And let me know, where do you think Falconer got his level 9 Pidgeotto from? Because it is definitely underleveled, but it is possible to get it in a few places in a few games. So let me know, where do you think Falconer's Pidgeotto originated from? But with the Zephyr badge in hand, we can move on into the Ilex Forest and catch our HM friends. And the first one that showed their face today was Psyduck. So we'll be using Psyduck for Surf, Strength, Waterfall and Whirlpool. And this second HM friend we're going to catch is of course Paris. Paris is going to be used for Dig, Sweet Scent, Cut and Flash. Both are equally as helpful as our Mr. Mime himself, so we will put them safely in our pockets and move on into Azalea Town. We have nothing to report from the Slowpoke Well this time, so we'll go straight to Bugsy. We're at a type disadvantage for Bugsy, so I start using Barrier, the move we started off with, and this will raise our defense by 2 stages each time we use it, so we only need to use it 3 times, and then I'll put up a Substitute. Substitute takes a quarter of your HP and creates a little doll that will be broken just like that when that quarter of HP has been taken, but that will protect us from critical hits. In this instance though, it doesn't matter because Scyther knocks itself out, and it's just a simple Confusion on the Kakuna that is weak to Psychic type moves. So we've defeated Bugsy in a time of 17 minutes and 20 seconds, and we can move on to rival number 2. Rival 2 leads with a Ghastly, which is part Poison type, which is terrible for it because it goes down in 1 Confusion. His next Pokemon doesn't fare much better either because it's Zubat, which is also part Poison type. And then it's just 2 Confusions against the Croconaw to knock it out, and we had a very painless rival number 2. It makes a change from all the times we use a Water, Grass or Fire type, and that is one of the trickier battles. We'll get Cut and Headbutt from the Ilex Forest. We'll then try and get Return early, but we're not quite friendly enough with our Mr. Mime, and now we'll buy 1 of each punching move. And I only realised afterwards that this edit makes me look like a dirty cheater. I sold some TMs before buying the 3rd one there, so that I could actually afford all 3. We get the bike from the man in the bike shop, we pick up the coin case, and now we'll give Mr. Mime a lovely little haircut. I'm not quite sure where Mr. Mime's hair begins, but the haircut brother found out where it was and did a very good job. We'll then spend our money for the Abra, we'll purchase Abra, and we can move on to pick up Kenya. This is going to be our 23rd main run Kenya, and Kenya's getting into the Halloween spirit. She's decided to put on a Pumpkaboo face mask. Well, it was an off-brand, we got it from the pound shop, so please do give her some compliments because she's feeling a little bit self-conscious that we had to get the own brand mask and not the officially licensed Pumpkaboo mask. But she looks just fine, doesn't she? Anyway, with all that out of the way, we'll pick up the Dig TM from the National Park. We'll also get the Squirts bottle activated, and now we can take on Whitney. We're going to use a substitute straight away from that Clefairy because it's used some status moves on me recently. We'll also raise our defence as much as possible, just so that we don't get hit hard by rollouts. And just to be extra safe, we'll put up another substitute as well. This is probably unnecessary, however, substitute is Mr. Mime's signature move in Generation 2. In Generation 1 it was a TM, and I think it's a TM in later generations as well. But in this game, if you want to use substitute, you have to use a Mr. Mime. And in this instance, it worked out quite well. The substitute didn't fade, we took no damage from the mill tank, and we get the badge in a time of 25 minutes and 36 seconds. So let's move on to Critique City, where the first thing we'll do is pick up Surf. This is in front of the Kimono Girls, and then we can move on to pick up the Magnet. The Magnet is only available on Sundays from this chap here called Sunny, and we can now move on to rival number 3. He's going to lead with a Haunter, which is a bad choice for him because we can just send it down in one simple confusion. We have the option here to learn Light Screen and Reflect. I declined both because we already have a great defence increasing move with Barrier, and our special defence is very, very high as it is, so I don't think we'll need it in this run. And after that, the Feraligatr was relatively easy. We had a little bit of issues with the Magnemite because we don't have a super effective move in our learn set. I didn't teach Fire Punch because I wanted to keep Thunder Punch for a little bit longer, and the Zubat, of course, is a trivial one-shot. So we've defeated Rival 3, we'll drop through the hole in the floor, we'll have a look at the legendary beasts, and now we'll take a chat with Morty. Oftentimes, Morty is one of the trickiest gyms, but in this instance we are a Psychic-type Pokemon, so we are at an inherent advantage. We can use Confusion against the Ghastly to one-shot it, we can do the same against the Haunter, and then out comes Gengar. We use a substitute against the Gengar, that way we don't get hit by Hypnosis, and it's as simple as 2 Confusions to knock it out. The final Pokemon, of course, is his second Haunter, and that goes down in just the same way as Haunter number 1. So that was a nice and easy Morty battle for once. We get the Fog Badge and we also get TM30, which is Shadow Ball, and we can move on into Olivine City. Of course, the first thing we're going to do in Olivine City is pick up the Strength HM. That's going to be taught to our Psyduck along with Surf, and then we can move up to the top of the Lighthouse. At the top of the Lighthouse, we find Jasmine. She's going to be our 7th gym leader, and she needs some medicine for poor Amphi. So we'll make the arduous trek all the way over to Cyanwood City, and we'll go to the dodgy shop here on the island. We'll pick up the secret potion, and while we're here we'll take on Chuck's gym. We had no issue at all from any of the gym trainers, so we are on to Chuck himself. He's only got 2 Pokemon, and they're both going to be weak to our psychic moves. So we use Confusion against the Primeape, and we don't actually one-shot. This confused me an awful lot at the time because I was really planning on it being a one-shot, and then of course we get hit by Hypnosis. I didn't pick up the Mint Berry on this run because we didn't need it for Morty's gym, and I completely forgot about Chuck sending us to sleep. But fortunately for us, we do break through that confusion, we wake up, and we defeat Chuck with 31 HP. That could have been an awful lot worse than it was. We could have had our first reset, but we will take the victory and run away before Chuck decides he wants a rematch. We'll pick up the rare candy from the Lake of Rage, no hidden power this time, and we'll go and take on Gyarados. We've got Thunder Punch, which is an easy one-shot on the Gyarados. We'll pick up the Red Scale, and now it's time for the Liar with the Flyers. It's Lance time. He is here telling us about all sorts of suspicious activity in the Rocket Hideout. We find out that it's these Electrode that are powering it. We almost get knocked out by one, and here we get the opportunity to learn Psybeam. Psybeam is ostensibly stronger confusion. We lose 5 power points in place of 15 more base power, so that is going to see us through right until past the Elite Four, because of course we cannot learn Psychic once again until after the Elite Four. This is a theme with a lot of Psychic type Pokemon. They lock it behind that TM, which is incredibly frustrating, so we'll take our frustration out on poor Chuck. We've got Thunder Punch for both his water type Pokemon, and that's 3 shots in total for those, and that just leaves Piloswine. I send one Psybeam its way, it misses its Blizzard, and a second Psybeam is all it takes to knock out the Piloswine and defeat Price. And that's the Glacier badge obtained in a time of 42 minutes and 57 seconds. Before we take on Jasmine, we'll pick up the Charcoal from Azalea Town, and we'll also replace Thunder Punch with Fire Punch. We're going to be cycling through a lot of the punching moves in this particular run, and we're going to test it out on her Steel types. Steel is one of the best types defensively, however it is weak to fire, so this will be a very easy battle against the Magnemites. 2 Fire Punches is all it takes to take out 2 Magnemites, and now we're on to the Steelix. A single Fire Punch does it because Steelix doesn't have great special defense, and we have defeated Jasmine with a time of 44 minutes and 27 seconds. That's 7 badges in hand, so it's time to do our regular housekeeping at this point. We're going to pick up some bits and pieces that we missed on our first run through the Johto region. We'll get the rare candy from Violet City, we'll get the hidden rare candy at the south of Goldenrod City, and that's it for this run. We can now go on to rival number 4 in the Goldenrod Underground. He'll lead with a Golbat, which is very fortuitous for us because we can knock it out in just 1 Psybeam. Sneasel's next, which does have a type advantage over us, but we have Fiery Gloves on our Mr. Mime, so we knock it out in 1. Feraligatr doesn't bother using a Dark type move, so it's 2 simple Psybeams against that. We punch the Magnemite into space, and the final Pokemon is Haunter. That part Poison type is working against Haunter, we knock it out, and we've defeated Rival 4 in a time of just shy of 50 minutes, which is very, very good actually. So we can move on into the Ice Path where we pick up the Never Melt Ice, and we're going to swap that with the Charcoal and swap our Boxing Gloves. We learned Thunder Punch for the top of the Radio Tower, but now we'll swap it back to Ice Punch. Ice Punch is going to be excellent against these pesky Dragon types, so it should be easy as 1, 2, 3 with the Dragonair. There's number 1 going down straight away. Out comes number 2. Number 2 doesn't have an answer for us, so that goes down, and I have to say the Dragonair sprite is very cute. It's just a shame it's one of the most annoying Pokemon you can go up against in these runs. And that brings us on to the final Pokemon, the Kingdra. Psybeam doesn't take over half damage off, which is a little bit concerning. We then get paralysed from Dragon Breath, so I decide to put up a substitute. But it turns out that was completely unnecessary because we get a critical hit to knock out the Kingdra, and we've defeated Claire. Time of just over an hour to get the badge. One of our best paces in a very, very long time. So with badge in hand, we can move on in towards the Pokemon League. So we'll pick up the rare candy just east of Newbark Town, and now it's time to swap the Boxing Gloves once more. We're going to replace Ice Punch with Fire Punch. The rival has both a Sneasel and a Magneton, and that's going to make this battle just that little bit easier. So we engage with him just in front of the Pokemon League, and he leads with that Sneasel. We just punch it into orbit, and we knock it out. We grow to level 50 and out comes the Golbat. Golbat goes down to a single Psybeam, and now we're on to Magneton. Magneton joins Sneasel in space as we punch it to the moon, and here comes Haunter. We don't punch the Haunter, but we just say some nasty things to it with our mind and it goes down. We don't have anything that can one-shot the Kadabra, so I just use 2 Psybeams against it, and then Future Sight will deal a minuscule amount of damage later. Onto the Feraligatr we go in, it takes a slash over us as we take our Future Sight damage as well, but we knock it out in 2 Psybeams, and we've defeated the rival for yet another challenge run. And with Rival 5 all out of the way, that means we are at 0 resets as we enter the league. That is very impressive from Mr. Mime. Of course, we haven't had too many Dark-type Pokemon to go up against. But before we take on the league, we'll say thank you to Kenya, Abra, Psyduck and Paris. You've all been a great help in the Johto region. Have some well-deserved rest, and we'll see you back in Kanto. We'll buy our 4 full restores, and now let's take a look at our stats before we enter the Pokemon League. We are in the medium fast experience group, and that means we are level 50. We have 127 HP. We are holding the Charcoal. Our moves are Psybeam, Barrier, Substitute and Fire Punch. 80 in attack, 91 in defense, 131 in special attack, 151 in special defense, and 124 in speed. So now let's take on Will. He is a Psychic type trainer, and he will lead with Xatu. So we're going to use Fire Punch against the Xatu and take it into the yellow. Another Fire Punch knocks it out, and we grow to level 51. Out comes Xatu number 2, and we punch that one with fire as well as we get confused. He uses a Max Potion on us because, of course, he is allowed to use held items, but it's just 2 more Fire Punches to the wings to knock it out. While we've got the Boxing Gloves on, we might as well take out Jinx. Jinx tries to lovely kiss us, but gets burnt in the process and gets knocked out. Executor is a one-shot with a Fire Punch, and that just brings us on to Slowbro. Now, we don't really have anything effective against the Slowbro, but we get a very, very lucky Confuse. We then start punching it, because that's really one of the best things we can do along with a Psybeam. It body slams us, doesn't paralyse us, and that is Will all done and dusted. Time of 1 hour, 6 minutes and 24 seconds. Next up is Koga, and have you noticed how hairy his arms are? Goodness me, I've only just noticed that. Anyway, he's a poison type specialist, which is great for us. It means we can knock out the Gyarados in one shot. We have a fire punch for the Fortress, and we are on to Crobat. We use Psybeam against the Crobat, and we knock it out in one, which always feels good. And here comes Venomoth. Venomoth is weak to his Psychic type attack, and we get a critical hit just to make sure it goes down. But I would have rather have had the critical hit against the Muk, because it uses Minimize, but in this instance we hit through it, and we've defeated Koga, and that will bring us nicely onto Bruno. Bruno can often be a challenge because we use a lot of normal type Pokemon, but we have the type advantage here because he is a fighting type specialist. Hitmontop doesn't get a chance to attack. We Psybeam the Onix and it goes down straight away as well. That was really the only barrier in this run. Machamp uses a Rock Slide, but it doesn't get him very far, and then Bruno has to heal up his Machamp, but that just means it's a foregone conclusion as 2 further Psybeams knock it out. And his next Pokemon is Hitmonchan. Mach Punch does a negligible amount of damage before we knock it out in one, and here comes Legs the Hitmonlee. Hitmonlee doesn't have an answer for us either, and that means we've defeated Bruno. But now it's time for a real challenge. It's Karen, she is a Dark-type specialist, and she will lead with Umbreon. The first thing we're going to do is set up a substitute so that we don't get sand attacked, and then I misclick and click Psybeam. As you'll see later on, that doesn't really matter. Umbreon doesn't deal too much damage, so we do take it out in 4 fire punches, and we move on to Murkrow. We get a very lucky critical hit against the Murkrow with a fire punch, and now we're on to Houndoom. And this is where I realised I should not have kept Fire Punch for this battle. We should have swapped to Thunder Punch, because that would mean we could at least deal neutral damage to the Houndoom. So we'll swap the Charcoal and the Boxing Gloves around, so now we're holding the Magnet, and we have Thunder Punch in our 4th learn slot. So we're going to start the battle in exactly the same way as we did before. We will use Thunder Punch against the Umbreon this time though, and get a very lucky critical hit and paralysis, and that will put us in excellent stead against the Houndoom. Murkrow comes out, and Thunder Punch is super effective, so it goes down in 1 easy punch. Out comes Houndoom. We hit it with a Thunder Punch as our substitute fades. We hit it with another one and paralyse it, and Crunch still hits. We got quite close to knocking out the Houndoom, but that just means she heals it, and we get a very lucky Thunder Punch there to knock it out. We're only on 31 HP for the final 2 Pokemon, but they are both weak to Psychic type attacks, so we will use a Psybeam against the Gengar, another one against the Vileplume, and we get through Karen on our 5th try. That is not terrible at all. But now it's time to swap the Boxing Gloves. We're just going to swap 1 glove this time. We're going to be running 2 punches. Psybeam has run its course for this particular challenge, so we're going to have an Ice Punch on our left fist and a Thunder Punch on our right fist, and that will make Lance quake in his boots, because all of his Pokemon are weak to one or the other. So he starts with an Ice Punch on purpose against the Gyarados. That is to get the Rain out, and if we have the Rain, that will make the battle against Charizard, if we get that far that quickly, an awful lot easier. And then it's time to start punching some Dragonites. 2 Ice Punches later and they're both down. Here comes Aerodactyl, and while we're at it, we'll give a jab to the Aerodactyl as well. So that goes down and we're on to Charizard, but the Rain does actually stop. So we did waste a turn there and we get burnt for our sins. 2 Thunder Punches later and it goes down, and I misclick and use Thunder Punch again because I was in a rush, but it doesn't matter because Ice Punch is a special move. We knock out the Dragonite, and we have defeated Lance in a time of 1 hour, 12 minutes and 32 seconds, and we get a final league time of 1 hour, 12 minutes and 54 seconds. Don't go away because Kanto is next. And we are back where it all began, outside our house in Newbark Town. We get a call from Professor Elm because he's got some stuff to give us. The first thing we'll get is the SS tickets, and the second thing we'll get is the Master Ball to catch Snorlax in the Kanto region. We now need to retrieve our HM friends from Cherry Grove City, so we'll say welcome back to Kenya, to Abra, to Psyduck, and to Paris. And now we have just a couple of bits we need to pick up in the Johto region before we move on to Kanto. It's a pair of rare candies, the first one here in Mount Mortar that you need Waterfall to access, and the second one in the Whirl Islands that you need Whirlpool to access. And of course the first thing we do in Kanto is the last thing we do in Johto. We'll get the rare candy this time from the chairman of the Pokemon fan club, and we'll move on into Saffron City. And in Saffron City we'll pick up the Psychic TM, which is a very, very strong stab move, but we're not going to teach it for quite some time. We're now at Erica's gym, and she is a Grass-type leader. She'll lead with a Tangler. And on the topic of stab moves, I did actually get a comment mid-recording session telling me to pay attention to my stab moves a little bit more. So Michael, if you're watching this video, I'm not delaying teaching Psychic out of spite, it's just this is how the routing went. It was more fortuitous to use both the punching moves for type coverage here. So we'll take care of the victory bell, and we've defeated Erica in a time of 1 hour, 28 minutes and 24 seconds, and we can move on to Misty. Before we face her though, we're going to swap the magnets for the Never Melt Ice, so that way we have a boost to our electric type moves as we take on Misty. First Pokemon out is Golduck, and we use a Thunder Punch to the chops to knock it out. And here comes Starmie. We Thunder Punch Starmie to the face, and that gets knocked out in one hit as well. And the next Pokemon is Quagsire. Ice Punch is going to be neutral against Quagsire because, of course, this is parts ground type, which means we can't use a Thunder Punch, but it's back onto the Thunder Punch for the Lapras as it uses Rain Dance. So we didn't take a single bit of damage at all against Misty. So we can now go over to Saffron City, where Sabrina is waiting for us. She was waiting there because she knew we were coming, because she's Psychic, and she'll lead with an Espeon. We use an Ice Punch, but in hindsight, maybe a substitute would have been better on the first move, just to guarantee that we didn't get hit by Sand Attack. It's Mr. Mime versus Mr. Mime as he uses Barrier. That, of course, only raises physical defense, so 2 Thunder Punches does it. We paralyse the Alakazam as it uses Reflect. She's clearly expecting physical moves, but that didn't work in her favour there. She's not as psychic as she thought she was. Marsh Badge obtained in 1:24:33, and now it's time to swap the punches again. There is no point in having Thunder Punch against Lieutenant Surge, so we'll swap it to Fire Punch, and we'll also put a Paralysed Cure Berry on. That's just a little bit of protection in case of a Thunder Wave or a rogue secondary effect there. We will Ice Punch the Raichu, and it misses Thunder, and we knock it out with a second Ice Punch. Here comes the first Electrode, and that goes down straight away to Ice Punch. Magneton's next. We use a Fire Punch against it and melt it, and it goes into space just like all the other Magneton. We then use a Fire Punch against Electrode and hit through the double team to make sure it's fully down, and the final Pokemon is Electabuzz. Thunder misses once again, and we've defeated Lieutenant Surge in a time of 1 hour, 26 minutes and 26 seconds. It's Snorlax time, and I've had an awful lot of comments, especially in live streams, asking why I pick up the leftovers from Snorlax instead of going into Celadon City. So the reason is, we have to speak to Professor Elm after beating the Pokemon League so we can get the SS ticket. So that's just one extra piece of dialogue there, and then in order to get to Brock, we have to go through the Snorlax. So instead of running away from it, we can just catch it instead, and then just retrieve the leftovers that way. And if we went to the cafe in Celadon City, it would be a bunch of extra movement. And considering I pick up things like Curse and Protect occasionally as well, I just cannot afford that extra movement. Anyway, we are on to Brock. We taught Thunder Punch for Brock again, and that means between our 2 punches, we have a super effective move for each and every one of his Pokemon, and it paid off because we didn't take a single point of damage, and we've defeated Brock in a time of 1 hour, 28 minutes and 19 seconds. We'll take a quick pit stop at the remnants of Cinnabar Island to have a little chat with Blue, and while we're here we'll also pick up the rare candy. And now that we've done that, we can move on to the newly relocated Blaine in Seafoam Islands. He is a Fire-type specialist, he's got 3 Pokemon and will lead with Magcargo. I still feel very sorry for Magcargo's typing here. Out of all the Pokemon I've ran, it's probably the one I'm most attached to. Unfortunately though, we knock it out and we do the same to the Bumhead Fireduck here, and the final Pokemon is Rapidash. We use another Thunder Punch against the Rapidash as Fire Blast hits for a little bit of damage. We knock out the Rapidash, grow to level 63, and that is Blaine all done and dusted. Time of 1 hour, 29 minutes and 45 seconds. Janine is the final themed leader we'll go up against, and she is also the lowest of the Cantonian leaders. She leads with Crobats, which goes down to a single Ice Punch. We've got Ariados next. Ice Punch makes light work of that as well. Here comes Weezing, and there goes Weezing. Should we try that again, Janine? No, we're going for a Venomoth first. Venomoth goes down in one hit. Here comes the final Weezing. She was playing mind games with me there, sending them out in a completely different order to normal. Anyway, we've got the Soul Badge in a time of 1:30:35, just 50 seconds after Blaine. And here is our final gym leader. It's Blue, and he is leading with a Pidgeot. We use an Ice Punch against the Pidgeot to knock it out in one shot. We have a very good special attack, and the next Pokemon is Alakazam. Alakazam uses Reflect, which is fine for us because we are exclusively a special attacker. We make light work of the Rhydon, so no Sandstorm this time, and the next Pokemon is Gyarados. We Thunder Punch the Gyarados to take it down in one shot with a critical hit because it is of course 4 times weak to Thunder Punch. We then use an Ice Punch against the Executor, don't quite knock it out, but it only takes in Sunlight, so it's an easy 2 shots. The final Pokemon is Arcanine, so we start to use Thunder Punch. I thought it was going to take a while to knock out, but we got another lucky critical hit to knock it out, and we have defeated Blue in a time of 1 hour 31 minutes and 50 seconds. We're on a very, very, very good pace at the moment. 1 hour 32 to defeat Blue is a fantastic time, so we'll have a little chat with Professor Oak, and we'll then start making our way towards Mount Silver. But we're actually going to break the tradition of the last 22 videos. I meant to change my learn setup before Blue, however to get back to Goldenrod City I would have had to do the Magnet Train side quest. So instead we're doing it as soon as we get back into Johto. We will buy our Thunderbolts. This is going to replace Thunder Punch, and we're also going to replace Ice Punch with Psychic. So I hope that doesn't ruin the red fight too much. But after an awful lot of over-planning for me, I really couldn't find a better route than doing it this way. So Mr. Mime has finally hung up his boxing gloves, and it's time to face Red. Before we do though, we are going to swap the Nevermelt Ice for the Magnet, and we will see how we get on with our current level. We are currently level 64, and I forgot to heal before Red here. Not that it matters anyway, because I don't think we're going to get through at level 64. Psychic does a lot of damage on Pikachu, but it does go into healing range, so it means it takes a lot of Psychic to knock it out. Here comes Espeon. Espeon uses Psychic for a little bit of damage. Psychic hits again, we try Thunderbolts, but Espeon outspeeds, critical hits, and knocks us out. Even if we were at full health for the beginning of that battle, that critical hit would have KO'd us. So we'll try again, this time at level 67. And we have a bit of progress. We can one-shot the Pikachu now. That means we are on full health for the Espeon with 9 Psychics in our bag. We use Thunderbolt against the Espeon. We're taking off roughly a third each time, so it's going to be a 3-shot. But that does mean we're at just above half health as we get to Snorlax. Snorlax is an issue. I thought we would be fine with a barrier, but Body Slam does an awful lot of damage. We only have 65 in the defense stats, which isn't great, so it's time to go up a few more levels, and this time we're going to put on the leftovers as well. We are level 70, and we know that Pikachu is a formality at this point. Espeon is still going to be a 3-shot, so I use Psychic to try and get a Spadef drop. Didn't quite work out that way, and we get a critical hit on us from Psychic from Espeon. So we're now back onto the Snorlax. I decide to use a Thunderbolt to try and get the paralysis, but it doesn't quite work out. I use Psychic to take it down a little bit further, and Body Slam is still doing huge damage. In fact, we get knocked out with just 2 Body Slams. We're going to have to raise our level even more, and we're going to use all our rare candies. We are now at level 74. We're against the Pikachu once more, and this still is a formality. It's just 1-shots with Psychic. On to the Espeon we go. We put up a substitute this time because I want to try and build our defense against the Espeon. The substitute doll can absorb a lot of the Psychic damage, and that means we can set up barrier a little bit easier. And then once we're all set up, we will use Thunderbolt against the Espeon and we paralyse it. Unfortunately for us though, paralysis doesn't strike at all, so it was ostensibly useless. We'll set up a substitute and go down to 52 HP. I'm hoping with the barrier that substitutes will survive. And now we get into a bit of a war of attrition with this Snorlax. I've sped up the footage here, and we're going to be using footage from 2 separate runs. I did not get through the Snorlax on this run, and you'll see eventually we will swap to another run at 11 resets. And it really is much of the same story. Both Mr. Mime and Snorlax are digging their respective heals in, and nobody's making much progress. And then as soon as Snorlax gets low, he goes to sleep. We do eventually get some lucky critical hits here and there, and that does give us the opportunity to knock out Snorlax once and for all. We're on to Charizard with 76 health, and all that time just wasn't worth it, because a single flamethrower knocks us out. We're going to have to change tack, and here comes TM01 Dynamic Punch. We're going to all the way back in Chuck's gym, and we're going to replace Barrier with it. So this is very much going to be a throw of the dice run, but I think that's going to be the fastest way to get through Red. We have a reliable way to get through the Pikachu, and we have a reliable-ish way to get through Espeon. In this particular instance, we get through with almost full health, and we're onto the Snorlax. We Dynamic Punch to confuse it, but we do very little damage because of that Reflect that was set up. We Dynamic Punch again, Snorlax hits us though and paralyses us, and that's enough for me to stop that attempt. Paralysis for the final few Pokemon would not be a good idea. So we try again. We know that we can Psychic the Espeon, and this time Espeon doesn't use Reflect. I didn't get a Spadef drop though, which was a little bit annoying, so it is a 3-shot. But we are still well in the green for Snorlax. We miss our first dynamic punch, but he uses amnesia. We are just using physical attacks, and now we've done double the damage we would have done with Reflect Up. Snorlax hits itself in confusion a grand total of 4 times, and that just so happens to be the same number of times that we missed Dynamic Punch. So we both had equally awful luck, but I'm not going to complain because the Psychic finished off the Snorlax, and we are on the Charizard with full health. We paralyse the Charizard, but it hits us with Flamethrower. Doesn't really matter though, we're still almost at full health as the Blastoise comes out. Thunderbolt does great damage against the Blastoise and we take it deep into the yellow. He doesn't even attack us as it uses Rain Dance, and that means we are on to the final Venusaur. Venusaur is weak to Psychic and we take it deep into the red as he uses Sunny Day. That gives us the perfect opportunity to just knock it out, and we have defeated Red in a time of 1 hour, 46 minutes and 1 second. So a very, very good time for a Pokemon that had to struggle at the very beginning. That puts him in 6th place, in between Electabuzz and Dodrio. And at the other end of the leaderboard, poor Bumhead Fireduck Magmar is now in 11th place, and poor Magcargo still the slowest in 23rd place. And with that, we are done. So I'm going to say thank you all so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. If you have, please do leave a like. If you've really enjoyed yourself, please do consider subscribing. If you've got anything to say, especially about your phobias, let me know in the comments below. And I have a Patreon at patreon.com/TrainerSquidgy. Until next time, though, I'll say thank you for watching, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Happy Halloween.